life growing up was a little difficult. It was hard. I lost my parents at a young age. I lost my father at 7. I lost my mother at 9 years old. My father, due to an injury, he got shot in the leg. He was involved in all types of drugs. He used drugs, he sold drugs, and it was an altercation. I mean, the story that I was told, because I never really knew until I got older, he was being kidnapped because they thought that he was dealing, because he used to deal with a lot of drugs, so they thought he had a lot of money on him. And unfortunately, he got shot in his leg, so he died to complication due to that gunshot wound in the leg. He had to get it amputated, scar tissue built up. He couldn't use the bathroom. Hospitals didn't take care of him the way they were supposed to, and as a result of that, he passed away. My mother, she OD'd on drugs. She was a heroin addict, so she pretty much just OD'd on drugs, and it was I knew she was a drug addict. At that age, at 9 years old, you start kind of, I barely seen my mom, so you start just kind of, all right, what's the issue and all this other stuff. But you could tell based on what you see out of her. But as I got older, I was raised with my aunt and my uncle. They took care of me. They took care of me since I was 2 years old. But I was in and out. I was mainly around my father. But they pretty much raised me. I lived with them. They had 2 kids, so those were my brothers. And that was my family. My aunt and my uncle, that was my mother, my father, since growing up, even till now. I started boxing when I was, I want to say 17. I started in Red Hook when they used to have a PAL in Red Hook by Red Hook Pool. I started there. It didn't really work out in the beginning, and then we went everywhere. Like my uncle took me everywhere to look for to look where I could train. I ended up in Sunset PAL. That's where I started. I was working with the trainers there. Basically, what happened is that they didn't keep me active enough. I got bored. I mean, they were saying, oh, you're good, you can fight. I fought in the JOs. After the JO, I had one fight. After the JOs, I didn't fight until like the Golden Gloves. And then when I fought in the Golden Gloves, it was a different story. Like I fought once or twice, but it was like I had to wait every year for the gloves. So I didn't have the time for it. I was like, I'm not gonna do that. So I just ended up in the streets, man. I ended up like just kind of hanging with the wrong crowd, hustling. Just pretty much, I fell off, man. And my father used to box. My actual father used to box. He was a professional fighter. He fought in the amateurs. He won the Golden Gloves a couple of times, if I'm not mistaken. And he fought as a pro. He had four pro fights. I think he lost one. He fought at 130 pounds. I'm much bigger than my father. Boxing, I think it's just in my blood, man. I came in and it was like, I fell in love with it right away. And, I didn't have that much of an amateur career, and I just decided to go straight pro. I had like 11, 12 fights as an amateur. Right now as a pro, I'm undefeated, 10-0. I have 2 draws, but 2 good draws, so it's not bad. But that's what it was. It was in my blood. I've always been a fighter throughout my life, so I just said, why not box? And then boxing just kind of like was the gateway to really, getting my mind adjusted and helping me out, man. Really putting that discipline in me. So it was, boxing helped me. I originally trained in Flatbush, PA, Flatbush, Cops and Kids, Atlas Cops and Kids. I was working with Sosa. great trainer. You know, I mean, he does well with the amateurs. You know, I don't think he worked with a lot of pros. And not, you know, I'm not bashing Sosa. I love Sosa. He's like a great friend of mine, you know. But there was something lacking, and I wasn't sure what it was. You know, from there I ended up in Connecticut working with, you know, Delvin's manager had called me to work in Connecticut to spar with Delvin, to be a sparring partner for Delvin Rodriguez, get him ready for one of his fights. And then, you know, I started working with AJ Galante, his manager, and he wanted to work with me as far as started managing me. And then I was working with Delvin's trainer for a little while. There was also like, you know, I mean, I felt a certain way and I took it a little bit personal. Like I said, he was a great trainer as well, but it was also something missing that I wasn't getting. And then I knew of Normal for a long time. I knew Louis trained here. I knew, you know, Danny, everyone comes here as far as the pros. They all come to Star City. And, you know, I was like, let me give it a shot. So I went, I called Normal, I spoke to him, I told him, this is what I'm trying to do. And he was like, just come in, we'll speak. And I told him, look, you know, I'm looking for a place where I can actually train. You know, I mean, you know, I've been working with these trainers, but I don't feel like there was a connection there. And then, so we spoke, we sat down, and I started training here immediately. And I just felt comfortable, you know, it just felt right. And I just made, you know, I officially made Star City my home, where I train, where I do my boxing, where I do everything out of. So it's pretty much my home. I mean, it's always a learning experience. Working with these guys, like working with Louis, sparring with Louis. You know, we even got Saddam started training in Star City now. You know, which is great for, you know, us, because that's, you know, he's Olympian. You know, have so many experience as far as boxing. Me coming out of not that much experience, you know, which is no excuse, but I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly picking up. You know, sparring with Danny. You know, seeing these guys, Curtis and all these guys train. It's always a learning experience in there for me, you know, what to do, what not to do, how to, you know, it's just all a learning experience for me, man, and it feels good just being around that environment, being around that boxing environment where, you know, you got these pros here who are knowledgeable in the sport, who have the experience, and I'm able to pick that up from them. Fighting the Barclays it was an experience for me, man. You know, it was like it was basically a taste of, you know, for the future, like what I hope to expect and what I hope to see out of my career, out of my boxing career. It was like, okay, look, you know, you're there, but you're not really there. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm glad I have a following, and, you know, it felt like, you know, the arena was full when I came out. But, you know, it was just like, you know, don't get comfortable with this. Don't be satisfied with just this. You know, you could main event this. You know, you could be fighting for a world title in this place. So it basically just opened my eyes and gave me actual, you know, because there's a lot of talent out there in boxing. They don't get opportunities, man. To have that opportunity was something that was real. It was special to me, because it was like, you know, fighting in the World Casino, fighting in the, I mean, I fought in the Aviator before. I fought in Cordon Bleu, which is very a small venue. So fighting in an arena like that, it just kind of like, okay, you know, this is going somewhere. So it just felt great.